Hey guys, so today we're going to be learning about quadratic functions. Quadratic functions are parabolas. Those are those U-shape graphs. Okay, so we're mainly going to be talking about their key features today. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with this equation right here. And we're going to graph this equation on our calculator and we're going to identify the critical attributes. So let's go ahead and go to our calculator and type this in. So I'm going to add a graph page. And I am typing in 2x squared plus 12x plus 9. Okay, the first thing on your page of notes, it asks for the vertex, guys. Your vertex is either your highest or your lowest point. So you see my U shape right here. So I can't really see it, but I know the point of it would be down here somewhere. So I'm going to use trace, menu 5-1. So remember, trace you can move using your left or right arrow. So I'm going to use my left arrow until I get to that very tip point. There it is. Okay, so since it's my lowest point, that's why it says the word minimum. It's the lowest minimum. So I'm going to write this point right here next to vertex. So in parentheses, -3, -9. All right, the next one, I'm going to skip axis of symmetry for now. We're going to go into y-intercept. So y-intercept is where it's on top of the y-axis, where here's the y-axis here. So I'm going to move my cursor to the right until it's on top of the y-axis. I'm on my y-intercept. So I'm going to write this on y-intercept. So parentheses 0, 9. Okay, my minimum, let's go back to that real quick. Because question D asked for the minimum. Well, our minimum value, I have this point right here. But really, guys, when it's asking about the minimum, it's asking how high is it or how low is it, which is really asking about the y value. So I know my minimum is -9 because the lowest it goes is down 9. So my minimum is -9. Okay, it's also asking about the zeros, aka my x-intercepts. So it crosses the x here and it crosses the x here. So that's why we have two answers on question E. So I'm going to move it here first. It really doesn't matter. Okay, it's my 0, my x-intercept. So I want the x value. So I'm going to write this number down. And now I'm going to swing it around until it hits the x-axis again here. And so my 0, my x-intercept is at -5.12. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my notes just so make sure we're all together. Boom. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about axis of symmetry yet, but we'll get there. I want to put it on my graph. In order to graph a parabola, you have to have at least 3 points, which I have one good point here, one good point here. So let's create a table. So -3, -9, 0, 9. But like I said, you need at least 3. The more you have, the better. So what I'm going to do is go back to my calculator and I'm going to open the table, Control T. Okay, these numbers are way too big. Notice our graph doesn't go to numbers that big, so I don't want to use these, so I'm going to go up. 0, 9 we already have down. Okay, -1, -1, I can add that one. -2, -7, I can add that one. I already have -3, -9, and -4, -7. So like I said, you need at least 3. I personally prefer about 4 or 5. All right, so I'm going to go plot these points. So -3, -9. So I'm going to go back 3, down 9, and put a point. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. Zero, 9, just here. -1, -1. -2, -7. And -4, -7. Okay, So remember, we said -3, -9 was our vertex. That was the very bottom point. So what I'm going to do is from here, I'm going to turn this into a U-shaped graph. Okay, not perfect. I was supposed to go through that line, but you see. Okay, so that's roughly what it looks like. Okay, your axis of symmetry, y'all. Your axis of symmetry is the line that cuts it in half. So my axis of symmetry is this guy right here. Okay, remember axis is spelled with an X. So an axis of symmetry is always X equals. And notice your axis of symmetry always goes through this vertex. So I'm going to look at my vertex, and I'm going to take the X. Well, the first number is my X, so X is equal to -3. Notice how it would cross the x-axis at -3 as well. Okay, domain. Domain is X, which is left and right. Range is Y, which is up and down. So whenever I do domain, I like to put my pencil on the parabola that I drew on my graph, and I slide it to the left. I notice that if I slide to the left, it's going to keep going forever and ever. Okay, if I slide it in the direction of the right, I notice it will also go forever and ever. So when there's no stopping it, we call that all real numbers. Okay, range, Y, is up and down. Well, I notice that this will go forever up, but it will not go forever down. We have a low point here at the vertex. Okay, so when there's one stopping point, you start with your variable, range is Y. We said it goes forever up. Well, greater than makes sense for that, or equal. And it goes forever up from this point. So I'm going to go look at my vertex. Remember, range is Y, so I want to take this second number, the Y value. All right, let's try that again. Now I'm going to go graph this equation. So it's -2x squared plus 4x plus 3. And I'm going to use trace, menu 5-1. The first thing is asking for the vertex, which is that very, like the point of the parabola pretty much, like the high or the low point. So here's my vertex, so I'm going to move it there. Notice it says the word maximum because this time it's the highest point. All right, so I'm going to write this down by vertex. Okay, now I'm going to jump to question number 5, which is said maximum. Remember, this is our maximum. But remember, your maximum or minimum is talking about how high or how low. Well, that's your Y value, so I know my maximum is 5. The highest it goes is 5. Okay, let's do C. It says the y-intercept. So I'm going to move my cursor until it's on top of the y-axis. All right, so I'm going to write this down by y-intercept. Now I have zeros, so I know my zeros are where it touches the x-axis. Well, it crosses here and it also crosses here. So I'm just going to move this one first because it's closer. Okay, that's my x-intercept, so I'm going to write down this number. And now I'm going to swing it around to my other x-intercept, which is here, so I'm going to write down the 2.58. All right, just so we have everything looking alike, here we go. So I want to put it on my graph, so I'm going to make my table. So we already have 2 good points, the vertex and the y-intercept. So remember, you have to have at least 3, but I like 5. So what I'm going to do is go back here and open my table. Okay, so I see 1, 5, which we already have. So I'm going to write 2, 3. And 3, -3. I don't like -13 right here because that's getting too big. It won't fit on my graph, so I'm going to go the other way. 0, 3 we already have down, and then -1, -3. And that should be good. So I'm going to go plot those points. So I'm going to zoom in. 1, 5. 0, 3. 2, 3. 3, negative 3, and negative 1, negative 3. Okay, remember we said that our vertex was at 1, 5. So from there, I'm going to turn this into a U-shape parabola. That was way off. Okay, it's off just a little bit, but. Okay, so remember your axis of symmetry is the line that cuts it in half. An axis is spelled with an X, so we have to put X equals. Remember your axis of symmetry always goes through this vertex, so I look for the X of the vertex. So X equals, the X of my vertex is 1. Notice it crosses the X-axis at 1 as well. Okay, so we have domain and range left. Domain is how far left or right. Range is how far up and down. So I put my cursor, or you can put your pencil on your parabola and slide to the right. As we slide to the right, we notice it will never stop. If I slide it back to the left, it will also never stop. So I know my domain is all real numbers. Range is up and down. Well, it does not go forever up. It has a stopping point right here. This is the highest at the vertex. But it will go forever down. So when there's one stopping point, I know that we put our variable for range, which is y. Okay, this one is going forever down, so down would be less than or equal. So my vertex is the highest point, so I want to go look at that vertex. Range is y, so I know I need to put 5. Okay, on this one, it says the graph below has a vertex at, so my vertex, this point right here, is at 4.6, comma, 12.2. It says other than the origin, which is here, at what point will it cross the x-axis again? So I know if we continue this guy, it's going to land somewhere down there, but where exactly where? All right, so in order to figure that out, I'm going to use this information that it gave me about my vertex. Well, I know that my vertex, a parabola, can be split in half through the vertex, and that's called the axis of symmetry. So it's somewhere between 4 and 5 where it gets cut in half. Well, to figure out exactly where, I'm going to look at the x of my vertex, 4.6. Well, if that's exactly in half, from here to here is 4.6, so I need the same distance on the other side. So I know from here to here is 4.6. This will be another 4.6. So 4.6 plus 4.6 is equal to 9.2. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up this drawing of our arch. And I'm going to show that it hits here at 9.2. Okay, this one is asking me for the maximum, which is the highest it goes. The highest it goes is this vertex right here. Remember, it's asking how high, which is the y value, so I know my maximum is 12.2. Okay, remember axis of symmetry is spelled with an x, so I'm going to put x equals. And I know that the axis of symmetry goes through the vertex, so I look at the x of my vertex, so x is equal to 4.6. Okay, my zeros are the x-intercept, so I see the parabola touches here once at 0. And it goes up, and it doesn't touch the x-axis again here when we finish the arch drawing, and we said that was at 9.2. Okay, my domain and my range. Domain is how wide it is, how far left and how far right. This one's a little bit different, guys. We're going to find the domain and range of the completed arch drawing. So domain is how far to the left to how far to the right. So what I like to do is frame it. So I know it comes over here and starts over here at 0. It goes up and it comes down and it stops over here on the x at 9.2. So this time we actually have 2 stopping points for domain. It starts at 0 and it ends at 9.2. So whenever you have 2 stopping points, we start with the smaller number, which is 0. Because we start with the smaller number, we're always going to use less than. Everything is solid here, so I have my or equal. We put the variable for domain, which is x. I'm going to put another less than or equal because everything is solid, and it goes from 0 to 9.2. Okay, range is how far up and how far down. So I know it starts this low, and this is the highest it goes. Okay, so you put the small number first, so it starts down here at 0, less than or equal to, the variable for range is y, another less than or equal to. Okay, and be careful here, because I have a lot of people that like to say 12, but we know the highest part is the vertex, and we know this vertex is at a height of 12.2, so the highest it is 12.2, not 12. All right, very good. Okay, so on this one, guys, we're going to have to use our knowledge of some of these new vocabulary words to figure out. It's like giving some clues, and we're going to have to fill in the rest of the pieces. The first thing that it gives me that I like is it tells me that my zeros are at -3 and 1. Okay, so I know that's where it crosses the x-axis. So on the x-axis, I'm going to go put a point at -3 and 1. Okay, so from here, I know I can find my axis of symmetry because an axis of symmetry splits it down the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split those 2 points down the middle. Okay, axis is spelled with an X. X equals, and while I can see that this axis of symmetry touches the x-axis here, which is at -1. Okay, so what we learned about a vertex is that our vertex will land on top of our axis of symmetry. So the vertex has to be on top of this somewhere. Okay, another clue that they gave us is that we have a maximum when y is equal to 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my axis of symmetry, and since y is 4, I'm going to go up 4 and put a point. So I know my vertex is at -1, 4. And this was the vertex. Okay, so remember we need 3 points in order to draw a parabola, which I have 3 points. Okay, so here's my vertex. So from here, I'm going to turn it into a U-shaped parabola. My maximum value, remember the maximum is your vertex, but the maximum is asking pretty much how high it is. So I look at the y value. So my maximum is at 4. That's the highest it goes. Domain is how far left and right, so I trace it. As I go to the left, it never stops. As I go to the right, it never stops, so I call that all real numbers. Range is how far up and down. It will not go forever up. I have a high point, but it will go forever down. Okay, so I start with range, which is y. Forever down is less than or equal to. And it goes down from my vertex. So I look at the vertex, range is y, so it goes down from 4. Okay, on this one, it tells me that I have an axis of symmetry at x equals 3. That one's given. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go draw my axis of symmetry at x equals 3. So remember, this is going to be the line that's going to split my parabola in half. Another piece of information it gives me is that I have a 0, at x is -1. So I know that means it's going to cross the x-axis at -1. So on the x-axis, go to -1 and put a point. So one of my zeros is -1. And I'm about to find the other one. The way I can find the other one is I know this splits it in half. So if I have one 0 that's 1, 2, 3, 4 squares away, I know I'm going to have another 0 that's 4 squares away on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which means my other 0 is at, start at the origin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, in order to find my vertex, I'm going to use the clue that it tells me that I have a minimum value of -2. Okay, well, your minimum is your vertex, and I know my vertex has to fall on this axis of symmetry. Since it tells me it's at -2, from here I have to go down 2. So my vertex is at 3, -2. This point right here. So I have enough points to draw a parabola because I have 3. This is my vertex, so from here I'm going to turn it into my U-shaped parabola. Okay, minimum value, the lowest it goes is the vertex. So I look at my vertex. Remember, it's asking how low it is, so that's your y value. So it goes down to -2. All right, domain is how far left and right. Range is how far up and down. So as I trace it to the left, I notice it's never going to stop. As I trace it to the right, I notice it will never stop. So my domain is all real numbers. Range is up and down. I notice it will go forever up, but it will not go forever down. I have this low point, the minimum. So I start with my variable, range is y. It goes up forever, that's greater than or equal to, and it goes up from my vertex. So I look at the vertex, range is y, so I know it goes up from -2.